start streaming and start recording. That puts us live on YouTube. And we got anything we say can be picked up on those mics because they're phantom powered cardioids. So if we need to whisper in the ear, that usually is okay. Yeah, that's good too. All right, 1 minute to live. So we got Chi-Town Expats. We got Frank Sinatra's Chicago, that brings us into the show here. And Ron, can you do a mic check real quick?
Check 1 2 1 2.
Perfect, thank you. We're on 4. He's on mic 4, which is here. And we are going to go into options. We're going to enable the live broadcast. This is going to tell us when we're connected to the server. Successfully connected. So now that interrupts whatever's going out. Okay. And we're at 3 o'clock. Next step is to click record the mix. And Ron, I'll cue you in when you're ready to get started talking, okay?
Okay. Ready to go. Hi, this is your host, Ron Harders, on the Chi-Town Expat Show. And among other things, I got an email from a lady that is one of the PCs in LD27. And she got hers from Tom Jenny, who is the head of the Americans for Prosperity here in Arizona. And it's about the bad week that they had at the legislature that we had. But the session isn't over yet. And if AFP Arizona were to publish its 2018 legislative scorecard right now, the governor and almost all Arizona legislators would currently rank as champions of big government. To learn why and to get the details on all of the bills we're tracking, check out our March 23rd legislative update. And that would be at AFP AZ Spartan Alert. Meanwhile, please take action through requests to speak on the bills below. Now, all of the bills in this March 23rd alert are in Senate or House rules, so please sign on in RTS by Monday morning, March 26th. Vote for House Bill 2153, which is sponsored by Representative Vince Leach of Oro Valley, passed the House 33-25 and has passed the Senate Judiciary Committee. Next stop, Senate rules on Monday, March 26th at 1 p.m. House Bill 2153 would protect the free speech and privacy of citizens by keeping their personal information or donation information out of invasive government databases and out of the hands of left-wing activists. We are for 2153. Vote against House Bill 2324. Sponsor Representative Heather Carter, Northeast Phoenix. Passed the House and has also passed the Senate Commerce and Public Safety Committee. Next stop, Senate rules. We are concerned that the current language could be easily tweaked in the future to create a mandatory licensing scheme for community health workers. And we oppose it because it creates a fee structure and an enforcement structure and a council, all of which will take up the time, that is money, and attention of bureaucrats. We believe that community health workers should set up a truly private certification organization, and we are against 2324. 4, House Bill 2399, sponsor Representative Paul Mosley, Mojave County. Passed the House 40-17 on February 15th and passed the Senate Commerce Committee March 6th. Next up, Senate rules on Monday, March 26th at 1 p.m. HB 2399 would allow applicants for licenses for real estate salespersons or brokers to do their training online, though they would still have to complete their final examinations in person. We are for 2399. Against, House Bill 2456, sponsor Representative Mark Fincham, Oro Valley. Passed the House and also the Senate Commerce and Public Safety Committee. Next up, Senate rules on Monday, March 26th at 1 p.m. House Bill 2456 would extend the horizon for ending the Rio Nuevo tax increment financing district in Tucson. We are against TIF districts and against 2456. 4, House Bill 2532, sponsor Representative Kevin Wayne, Northwest Valley. Passed the House 34-22 and passed the Senate Commerce and Public Safety Committee on March 19th. Next up, Senate rules on Monday, March 26th at 1 p.m. The reform would make it more difficult for cities and counties to impose occupational fees or licenses on entrepreneurs. We are for 2532. 4, House Bill 2604, sponsor House Speaker J.D. Mesner, Chandler. Passed the House 3422 and passed the Senate Government Committee March 21st. Next up, Senate rules on Monday, March 26th at 1 p.m. House Bill 2604 would help to ensure that cities hold elections in even-numbered years on days when voter turnout is high. Currently, cities often vary elections on dates when turnout is low, favoring policy outcomes promoted by crony contractors and government employee unions. We are for 2604. 4, House Concurrent Resolution 2007, sponsor Representative Doug Coleman, Apache Junction. Passed the House 34-25 and passed the Senate Judiciary Committee March 22nd. Next up, Senate rules on Monday, March 26th at 1 p.m. This reform, nicknamed No Taxpayer Money for Political Parties, would allow voters in 2018 to vote to prevent the so-called Clean Elections Commission from allowing taxpayer-supported candidates to funnel monies to political parties. We are for HCR 2007. 4, House Concurrent Resolution 2029, sponsor House Speaker J.D. Mesner, Chandler. Passed the House 3525 on February 21st and passed the Senate Finance Committee March 21st. Next up, Senate rules on Monday, March 26th at 1 p.m. HCR 2029 would allow voters to raise the exemption on one of Arizona's most destructive taxes, the property tax on business plant and equipment. We are for HCR 2029. 4, Senate Bill 1273, Sponsors, Senator William Peterson Gilbert. Passed the Senate 1911 and passed the House. Military Veterans and Regulatory Affairs Committee on March 19th. Next stop, House Rules on Monday, March 26th at 1 p.m. Senate Bill 1273 would push the Governor's Regulatory Review Council to strike down useless regulations. We are for 1273. Criminal justice reform. For information about bills related to criminal justice reform, contact Jalen Hudson with Generation Opportunity Arizona at chudson@afphq.org. One of Gen Op's key bills on criminal justice reform is to block a new, higher set of mandatory minimum sentences for drug crimes. Here is an action link on that issue. Okay. And that's from Tom Jenny, the advisor for American Prosperity in Arizona. Now, we've all heard, or we're hearing and getting more information about the deep state and what it's all about and how it's ruining the country and has been for a long time. So I'd like to give you a little information on how the Democratic and Republican Party platforms stack up on climate change, Iran, and more key issues. The party platforms of Democrats and Republicans finalized ahead of their respective conventions this month. And this is from a letter from prior to the conventions last year. Reflect the stark divide between the parties on both foreign affairs and domestic social issues. Here's a rundown of where the parties land on key topics. Climate change. Democrats describe climate change as a real and urgent threat, and they call for setting a price on greenhouse gas emissions. Climate change is too important to wait for climate deniers and defeatists in Congress to start listening to science. And government officials must take any steps they can to reduce pollution. The platform says. It calls for the country to generate half of its electricity from clean sources in the next decade and for cleaner transportation fuels, more public transit, and a tax code that creates incentives for renewable energy. The platform also beats back suggestions that protecting the environment would be bad for business. Democrats reject the notion that we have to choose between protecting our planet and creating good-paying jobs, it says. Republicans, on the other hand, say that climate change is far from this nation's most pressing national security issue, as Democrats have labeled it. They oppose international accords like the agreement crafted in Paris last year that aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to slow the climb in global temperatures. The platform also blasts President Obama's Clean Power Plan, which would cut emissions by shifting away from coal-powered power plants. The initiative has been put on hold by the Supreme Court. Republicans vow to do away with it entirely. They also pointedly describe coal as a clean energy resource, a description environmentalists have roundly rejected. Environmental problems are best solved with incentives for human ingenuity, not through top-down command and control regulations, the platform says. In my personal opinion, climate change is a real scam and needs to be done away with as far as the public is concerned. And so I'll be seeing you in the next segment with a little more from this letter. So have a wonderful day.
All right, we're clear, but we're still live clearly on YouTube. I was trying to let you get through some of that because it, so we went a little over, but you're good. 3 minutes, 3-minute break. I do 3 minutes. We got on 13, so 3:13, 3:28, and then 3:43. That's when we try to do them on
Yeah.
within reason. If you're trying to finish up a point or something, I try to let it go to,
Yeah. I usually can wrap up if I know.
Yeah, I just try to, I don't want to say anything to interrupt you, so I usually just kind of, I'll float her around there. I'm a climate change denier.
Me too.
Actually, I'm not. I think it happens. It's debatable the amount that humans contribute. I know there's some, clearly, but I just don't. I'm not a penny. I think the worst part of it is the stuff that, they can't explain, when the Ice Age, the first Ice Age melted, all the scientists say there's a unexplained carbon dioxide source.
Yeah.
Because that was before even people were around doing anything. And that's what melted and changed the climate at that time. Biggest thing that affects the climate is the closeness to the sun.
Yes.
So
and the sunspot activity.
Yeah, the Earth comes and goes closer and further away to the sun, which definitely has a pretty big impact. But I think it's something to at least study a little bit about. I don't know about spending billions of dollars on it.
No. Well, if you get government involved, that's where the billions go.
I would like to see China do better. Our emissions are pretty good, but China needs to do better.
Well, they're trying to kill off their population.
All right, we're coming back in 10 seconds.
We back? We're back. Now, the second part of this letter is Iran. And Democrats support the nuclear agreement between Iran and 6 world powers, including the U.S. If vigorously enforced and implemented, they also say the country should not hesitate to take military action if Iran violates the agreement. The deal struck last year and aims to curtail Iran's nuclear capability in exchange for lifting debilitating economic sanctions. Republicans have staunchly opposed the accord as dangerously enabling a longtime adversary. A GOP-led effort to block the deal in Congress failed last fall. The GOP platform rejects the Iran nuclear deal and states flatly a Republican president will not be bound by it. The party vows to retain all options in dealing with Iran. On the Islamic State, Democrats call for congressional authorization of military action that does not involve large-scale combat deployment of American troops. Their vice presidential candidate, Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, has been a leading proponent for new legislation to govern combat operations against Islamic State. The Obama administration is operating under authority granted by Congress after the September 11 attacks to use the military against international terrorism. Its own updated proposal last year languished in Congress. The platform also rejects Donald Trump's vilification of Muslims, saying it feeds into ISIS' nefarious narrative. Among Trump's most divisive proposals has been his call for a temporary ban on Muslims trying to enter the U.S. Republicans call the Islamic State a form of murderous fanaticism and support continued partnership with Iraqis to eradicate the terrorist group from the region, where it holds significant territory, both in Iraq and neighboring Syria. In addition to pushing back its fighters, the GOP calls for aiding victims of Islamic State. They support creating a safe haven in northern Iraq to protect ethnic and religious minorities targeted by the group. On gay rights, Democrats applaud the Supreme Court decision last summer allowing Americans to marry the person they love. They call for more steps to fight discriminating against LGBT people, including new federal laws. LGBT kids continue to be bullied at school, restaurants, can refuse to serve transgender people, and same-sex couples are at risk of being evicted from their homes, the platform says. That is unacceptable and must change. Well, I don't know about that. But anyway, at the GOP convention, there were some olive branches extended to gays and lesbians. Silicon Valley magnate Peter Thiel got cheers when he announced in a speech that he was proud to be gay. Trump himself acknowledged LGBT victims of terrorist violence and noted approvingly when the audience responded positively. Healthcare. Democrats believe healthcare is a right, not a privilege, and they support Obama's Affordable Care Act. What a disaster. They vow to keep fighting to ensure more states expand government coverage for low-income people. New steps are urged to reduce costs, and they want to make government-run insurance like Medicare available to more people. For too many of us, healthcare costs are still too high, even for those with insurance, the platform says, and medical debt is a problem for far too many working families. Republicans vow to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Congressional Republicans have held dozens of unsuccessful votes to roll back the legislation. In its place, they want to simplify the system to increase healthcare options and reduce costs. The platform calls for allowing consumers to shop for insurance across state lines. It promotes modernizing Medicare and transforming Medicaid into a block grant program that gives states flexibility in how the money is spent. On abortion, Democrats want to protect access to safe and legal abortion, and their platform says every woman should have access to quality reproductive health care services. Hillary Clinton, who once said abortion should be safe, legal, and rare, has emphasized her defense of abortion rights in her campaign. For the first time, Democrats are including in their platform the controversial goal of overturning the Hyde Amendment, which has been implemented since 1976 to ban the use of federal money for abortions. In addition, the platform says we will continue to stand up to Republican efforts to defund Planned Parenthood health centers. The Republican platform is unambiguously anti-abortion in all cases. It seeks to stop the collection of fetal tissue, which is used in medical research, and calls for defunding Planned Parenthood. The GOP also supports codifying the Hyde Amendment. The strong anti-abortion stance of the platform departs from the views of the GOP nominee Trump, who describes himself as anti-abortion after previously supporting abortion rights, said he backs blocking access to the procedure except in cases of rape, incest, or when a mother's life is at risk. The Republican platform does not include such exceptions. Trump has also staked out a softer stance on Planned Parenthood. He has said the care provider has done good things in offering other services to women, such as mammograms. He still supports defunding the organization because it provides abortions. Well, as far as Planned Parenthood is concerned, their statistics that they use to say that they're only 3% of their procedures are abortions is a lot of baloney. They actually, every time somebody goes into a Planned Parenthood clinic, and if they take a glass of water, that's considered to be a procedure. And so they mount up the amount of procedures so that abortions become only 3%. And that's a figure that it's really closer to 70 or 80%. And their methods are pretty uncivilized, if is the best word, or barbaric, if you will. So I think that it's about time that we defunded them and let them see if they can do it on their own. So I'll be back in the next segment, and we'll see what we can do then.
We're clear for break. We're about at halfway through the hour there. Okay. It's a lot easier to cut from pan the decks over. So basically, when we're going to break, just rolling some of the music on his bump out so that he can talk over going to the break. And then I start to play and then fade it quickly to pan right to that deck. Yeah. The commercial commercial break is all recorded as one. So that we don't have to, it'll automatically stop it, turns red when it's getting close to the end of the track. That way I know to bring him back in. And I usually don't play music on the bump ins, on the bump out. So usually when they're wearing a headset, a seasoned person, when they start hearing the music, they're like, oh, we gotta wrap it up because we're going to break. The music's a cue, you know. The bump out. Mhm. Gonna have this set up so eventually when we're outside I can talk to Ron in his headset through the. Can you hear me, Ron? Ron, we're coming back. 5 seconds. And you're back.
Hey, we're back, and we'll go a little further. As far as the minimum wage is concerned, Democrats want to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour and index it with inflation. Now, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. The push for a higher wage has taken off in liberal-leaning cities and states, including in California and New York, as well as Seattle. Republicans say the minimum wage is an issue that should be handled on the state and local level. Now, I want to point out that minimum wage jobs are usually held by McDonald's and these so-called fast food restaurants and so on. And it's so easy for the owners of the restaurants and the corporations to create kiosks to replace these workers, and they don't call in sick, they don't aren't late to work, they're not nasty, they give you the right order every time, and they don't cost anywhere near $15 an hour. So what it's done is to reduce the number of jobs available for starter jobs, and with the high unemployment that we've had in the past, it hasn't helped anything, and probably will continue not to. So I think personally that the minimum wage should be done away with completely. Now, Republicans denounced the court's marriage decision. Their platform supports so-called religious liberty laws that allow businesses the right to refuse services that violate their faith, such as baking a cake for a same-sex wedding. It also says efforts to allow transgender people to use bathrooms that conform with their gender identity instead of biological sex are illegal, dangerous, and ignorant of privacy issues. It's not that these ideas are new. In fact, the idea that a shadow government exists, well, Democrats applaud this, the Supreme Court decision last summer allowing Americans to marry the person they love. They call for more steps to fight the discrimination against LGBT people including new federal laws. LGBT kids continue to be bullied at schools. Restaurants can refuse to serve transgender people, and so on and so forth. So I think we need, let's see. Let's try this one. Bob Livingston is one of my favorites. He writes letters of from his Personal Liberty Media Group, and he just wrote one about this is the next tactic to disarm us. Authoritarianism or criminal government can never feel free from fear as long as millions of people own guns. Hence the long-term effort to disarm us. Almost all national politicians want Americans completely disarmed, even if few admit it, though they have done all possible to impress upon the public mind that private arms possession for any reason is un-American and not in the public interest, because guns are dangerous. Their debate is twisted nonsense, but people believe it. The politicians realize that mass forced confiscation will not work. It would result in the deaths of thousands of federal agents if they could find enough of them to attempt such a thing, nor have efforts at soft confiscation requiring self-reporting and voluntary surrender of arms and accessories suddenly deemed illegal been anything more than marginally successful in recent years. The truth is, the local sheriffs, rank and file police, and military members are by and large pro-gun, and their families and friends are as well. For the most part, they would be loath to join federal agents in a forced confiscation program. Though, as we saw in the Katrina aftermath, there are mindless drones who will follow confiscation orders without question, but most would likely join citizens in resisting such efforts. The result would be a bloody mess. So the elites have employed their propaganda machine to great effect. Vast swaths of ignorant people have swallowed the notion that certain weapons based only on appearance, form, and function are inherently more dangerous than others. Other anti-gun propaganda is used in pushing for the Fix NCIS bill, which is a bill ostensibly designed to make it a law that government agencies must abide by the law, but which will encourage governments to place people into the system over silly things like unpaid traffic tickets and for banning people on the terror watch list from possessing guns. Both of these laws abuse the notion of due process and would work to unlawfully disarm people based on government error, innuendo, and false charges. The topic of mental illness has jumped front and center in the gun debate in recent days, in wake of the Valentine's Day massacre at Marjory Stoneman Douglas School in Parkland, Florida. Even many well-meaning conservatives have fallen prey to this trap and are advocating for laws to remove guns from people without due process under so-called red flag laws. A bill has been introduced to provide federal incentives, that is, federal dollars, to encourage states to confiscate guns for the most sophisticated of reasons. So-called conservative lawmakers have signed on. The NRA, which has fooled millions of people into believing it looks out for their Second Amendment rights, has signaled a willingness to support them. Mental illness is as nebulous and malleable a term as assault weapon. Even psychiatrists admit that the classification of mental illness often relies on subjective criteria and that diagnoses for mental health conditions never rely on brain scans and blood tests. Conclusions of mental illness stem from observed behaviors, and any behavior that seems outside what is accepted as normal at the moment can later be labeled abnormal and therefore a mental illness on a whim. For several years, a push has been underway to label religious adherents as mentally ill. In 2006, biologist Richard Dawkins published his book, The God Delusion, in which he characterizes belief in God as delusional. Dawkins cites the definition of a delusion as a persistent false belief held in the face of strong contradictory evidence, especially as a symptom of psychiatric disorder. In 2013, Kathleen Taylor, a neurologist at Oxford University, said in interviews that recent developments suggest that we will soon be able to treat religious fundamentalism and other forms of ideological beliefs potentially harmful to society as a form of mental illness. She maintains that religious fundamentalism may one day be treatable and that religious people will one day be able to be cured. Isn't that nice? Taylor admits that the scope of what could end up being labeled fundamentalist is expansive. She continued, I am not just talking about the obvious candidates like radical Islam or some of the more extreme cults. I am talking about things like the belief that it is okay to beat your children. These beliefs are very normal, very harmful, but are not normally categorized as mental illness. In many ways, that could be a very positive thing because there are no doubt beliefs in our society that do a heck of a lot of damage, that really do a lot of harm. Last year, the journal Neuropsychologia released a study that purported to show that religious fundamentalists are brain damaged. It claimed its research determined that religious fundamentalism is, in part, the result of a functional impairment in a brain region known as the prefrontal cortex. There are millions of gun owners in America who consider themselves Christian. Now we have atheists in places of influence and power declaring ad hoc that Christianity is a mental disorder that can and should be cured. The day is soon coming where a person's Christianity will get him labeled as mentally defective and therefore ineligible to possess weapons. So we'll be back shortly.
We're clear from the live broadcast, still live on YouTube. We don't necessarily break on YouTube. Yeah. Hi, YouTube. YouTubers. No. They can only see Ron. Yeah, this camera is the one that you're on YouTube with. That's the camera that's going to YouTube, this one right here.
Oh.
So if you ever want to talk to the YouTube audience, you can talk right into that camera. And they can hear
Okay.
you.
Oh, it's got a microphone on the camera.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I got one of those at my house.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a HD one.
Yeah,
You can go back and watch yourself on camera later.
yeah.
I loop the commercials so about 6 minutes in between shows. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. On to other stations do back in that flag. You know? Yeah, and just people to shuffle the people around, and somebody who knows in the headset, like comms, like we would have comms, and we would go and get them. So we'll get there. Relatively easy though. Yeah. It's just remembering things like putting my finger back to the middle, so that if I play something on that deck, it's not muted.
Oh, okay.
Because if I'm panned all the way to the right deck, then the only thing that's going out to live on that. All right, we're about 15 seconds from coming back for the last segment. About 15 seconds to the last segment, coming back.
Okay, we're back. And the gun control problem is a mind control problem. The authorities know full well that they, with all their high-tech weapons, cannot subdue a determined people with private arms. Therefore, they use all manner of spurious persuasion to get you to give up your arms and to exert hostility toward others that won't. Same old divide and conquer. Be careful what you wish for. Just remember that one of the first things that Hitler did was to disarm the public. And the same thing in Russia with Stalin and Pol Pot. And everywhere else, the communists and the New World Order have taken control. Get rid of the ability of the people to defend themselves, and you can control them without any or with very little effort. And it's not that those ideas are new. In fact, the idea that a shadow government exists within our own nation have been around from nearly the beginning of the American experiment. Given the productivity of politicians and business leaders to follow similar paths to power, there are no telling just how many people of immense importance have been groomed by organizations such as Skull and Bones, the Freemasons, or other such secretive societies. Now, I myself am a Mason. I'm also a Knight Templar. And I have personally, from the Masons, never seen any of this sort of thing. But then again, I guess I've never been that involved. So it may go on. I don't know. The rumors that swirl around these fraternal organizations had an enormous part in developing the Illuminati mythos. if not being the sole catalyst of these theories. President Trump has his own Illuminati to fight as well, in what he and the media have dubbed the deep state, a collective of entrenched Washington, D.C. establishment types who are hell-bent on maintaining power through the cash-in, cash-out scams of Beltway lobbyists and special interests. Now perhaps due in part to Donald Trump's revealing of the veil between the two worlds, populism and politics, the American people are finding themselves in the healthy and necessary mood to question everything. And it's about time. According to a Monmouth University poll that was released this week, the majority of Americans believes that a group of unelected government and military officials secretly manipulate the United States government from behind the scenes. According to the poll, both Democrats and Republicans feel that there is a deep state faction that works in secrecy and exists to shape policy as well as spy on American citizens. The poll says that a vast majority of Americans, 80%, believe that the government is immorally keeping tabs on them. Furthermore, one of the pollsters involved says that the issue is for all Americans and not just for those of a particular political mindset. This is a worrisome finding. The strength of our government relies on public faith in protecting our freedoms, which is not particularly robust, and it's not a Democratic or Republican issue. These concerns span the political spectrum, said Patrick Murray, director of the independent Monmouth University Polling Institute. What's more, only a small fraction of the people who were polled believe that this widespread 1984 style police state is justified. According to the poll, only 18% of Americans are asleep enough to believe that Uncle Sam watching their every move is warranted. A heartening statistic indeed. This could help explain why so many Americans choose not to participate in our electoral system. Data from the general election of 2016 shows that the nation is struggling to get Americans to the ballot box, even for presidential elections. In that contest, only 58% of eligible voters actually cast a ballot, applying either a completely fabricated number or a widespread belief that the system itself has been corrupted. Well, with Hillary Clinton involved, we could see how someone could get that impression. Now, folks, we are being exploited by our government. There are people in the government who are making millions. There are trillions of dollars at stake for them. And as long as they maintain the control, just like this latest budget bill, which was really not a budget, omnibus, they feed their cronies, their families, and pass money back and forth like it's going out of style, which it may do one of these days. And it's not really we, it's our children and our grandchildren who are going to be paying the bill. And it's amazing. Trump has done so much to invigorate the economy and make things wonderful, make America great again. And he's being fought from every angle by those who sense that the gravy train might be over. And let's hope it is. So now we have to start looking for a way to change the country for the better. So until next week, we'll see you again. This is Ron Hars, and stay tuned for Chips and Salsa. Okay.
Yep. We are clear. Good show, sir. All right, we gotta make this happen real quick. So we're going to stop our recording here.